the massive alien ships appeared on Earth's sensors, like ghosts emerging from the darkness of space. Admiral Jinwoo Kim stood in the command center of Seoul Aerospace Defense, watching 12 enormous vessels drift past Neptune's orbit. Each ship was the size of a small city, but they moved with the slow, painful motion of wounded animals. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions," called out Lieutenant Hajin Park from her communication station. Her voice carried a mixture of excitement and fear that everyone in the room could feel. "They're trying to talk to us." Jinwoo had trained his entire life for this moment, but nothing could have prepared him for what he saw on the main screen. The beings calling themselves the Valthari looked fragile and tired. Their blue skin seemed almost transparent, and their large dark eyes held the weight of unimaginable loss. They stood barely 5 feet tall, with thin limbs that moved gracefully in the low gravity of their ship. Through broken translations, the story came together piece by piece. The Valthari had once lived on a beautiful world orbiting a stable star. They were scientists, artists, and philosophers who had spent thousands of years studying the universe and creating works of incredible beauty. They had no armies, no weapons, no experience with war or conflict. Then their sun began to die in a way that made no sense. It collapsed into itself, not over millions of years as stars should, but in mere decades. The Valthari had just enough time to build these massive ships and escape with the last survivors of their entire civilization. Commander So-Young Lee worked with the ship's computers to translate their desperate messages. "Admiral, they're asking for help," she said quietly. "Their life support systems are failing. They have maybe 2 months before the ships stop working completely." Dr. Minho Choi studied the technical data the aliens had shared. His face grew pale as he realized what he was seeing. "Sir, their technology is incredibly advanced. These ships use energy sources we've never seen before. But everything is breaking down. They've been traveling for over 20 years, and their equipment wasn't built to last this long." Chief Engineer Yoo Jin Song shook her head in amazement as she looked at the ship designs. "They built these vessels in a hurry. I can see where they had to cut corners and use materials that wouldn't normally work. It's a miracle they made it this far." The aliens had sent detailed records of their journey. 200,000 Valthari had begun the voyage. Now only 180,000 remained. They had lost friends and family along the way as their ancient ships slowly died around them. The survivors lived in growing fear that they would all perish in the cold darkness between the stars. Jinwoo felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Earth's governments were already arguing about what to do. Some politicians wanted to make deals with the aliens, trading help for their advanced technology. Others worried about the cost of supporting nearly 200,000 refugees. A few even suggested that the aliens might be dangerous. Despite all evidence showing they were peaceful scholars, the Valthari had nothing left to offer except knowledge. Their ships carried libraries of scientific discoveries, artistic works, and philosophical writings collected over millennia. But they couldn't trade their wisdom for food, air, or the massive resources needed to keep their people alive. "What do they need from us?" Jinwoo asked. Lieutenant Park consulted her translation. "Programs. They need places to live while they repair their ships. They need raw materials, energy sources, and time. Lots of time. They estimate it will take at least 5 years to make their vessels spaceworthy again." Dr. Choi added more sobering details. "Their bodies are adapted for low gravity and controlled environments. Earth's gravity would be too strong for most of them. They could live on the moon or Mars with some help, but it won't be easy." The command center fell silent as everyone considered the magnitude of what the aliens were asking. Earth had space, stations and small colonies, but nothing that could support 200,000 people. The cost would be enormous, and the technical challenges seemed almost impossible. Yoo Jin Song broke the silence. "Admiral, I've been looking at their medical data. They're dying. not just from the failing ships, but from something else. They call it heart fade. It seems to happen when they lose hope. On the main screen, a young Velthari child appeared next to one of their adult translators. The child's large eyes looked directly at the camera, with a mixture of curiosity and desperate hope. Even across the vast difference between species, the meaning was clear. They were asking not just for survival, but for a future. Ginwoo Kim had risen through the ranks by making difficult decisions quickly and standing by them. He looked around the command center at his crew, all of whom were watching him with the same expression as the alien child. They knew what he was going to say before he said it. "Contact Luna Base and begin emergency expansion procedures," he ordered. "Send word to Mars Colony to prepare for large-scale immigration support. And someone get me a direct line to the UN Security Council." He paused and looked back at the screen, where the Velthari waited for an answer that would determine whether their species lived or died. "We don't abandon people who need help," he said simply. "Not even if they come from the stars." 6 months after the Great Rescue, the moon looked completely different. Where once there had been only small research stations and mining operations, now sprawling settlements stretched across the lunar surface under protective domes. The soft blue glow of Velthari lighting mixed with the harsh white of human work lights, creating a strange but beautiful pattern visible from Earth. Engineer Taehan Nam wiped sweat from his forehead as he worked alongside his new partner in the main power station. Kevlar moved with fluid grace, using all 6 of his thin arms to adjust delicate controls that would have taken a human team hours to handle. The Velthari had been amazed to learn that humans typically had only 2 arms, while humans found it endlessly fascinating to watch their alien friends work. "Your people solve problems in ways we never considered," Kevlar said through the small translation device that Dr. Ji-Hai Kwan had developed. The device had become so popular that nearly everyone carried one now. "We calculate the best solution and follow it exactly. You try many different approaches until something works." Taehyun laughed as he reconnected a power coupling that should have been impossible to fix. "My grandfather used to say that there's always another way to solve a problem. You just have to be willing to try crazy ideas." The fusion reactors hummed with power that combined human engineering with Velthari energy technology. Neither species could have built them alone, but together they had created something better than either could have imagined. The power systems not only kept the lunar settlements running, but produced enough energy to begin the massive task of repairing the Velthari ships on Mars. The changes were even more dramatic. Botanist Young Ji Shin watched a group of young Velthari children playing in the greenhouse where she grew vegetables in the red Martian soil. The alien children moved carefully in the higher gravity, but their excitement was unmistakable as they helped plant seeds and water the growing plants. "Teacher Yoonji, why do the tomatoes grow better here than on our ships?" asked a child whose name roughly translated to Little Star. Her large dark eyes reflected genuine curiosity. "Because plants, like people, sometimes need new places to grow strong," Yoonji explained, helping the child adjust a watering tube. "Your people taught us how to make better soil. We taught you how to make plants happy in that soil." The Vel had been amazed by humanity's stubborn belief that life could grow anywhere. Their own agriculture had been highly controlled and scientific, producing exactly what was needed with no waste. But human farming was different. It was messy, experimental, and often produced unexpected results that turned out to be better than the original plan. In the research centers of both worlds, human scientists worked day and night to understand Velthari technology, while their alien colleagues studied human culture with growing fascination. Dr. Minho Choi had spent weeks learning how Velthari computers worked, while Velthari philosopher Theldar spent equal time trying to understand human history. "Your species has survived disasters that should have destroyed you completely," Theldar observed during one of his daily discussions with historian Dong Min Ko. "Wars, diseases, natural disasters, even near-extinction events. How do you continue when logic says you should give up? Dongmin smiled as he showed Eldar images from human history. We help each other. When one group falls down, others help them get back up. We learned long ago that we're stronger together than apart. This was the concept that most amazed the Velthari. Their own civilization had been peaceful and unified, but they had never encountered the idea of helping complete strangers simply because help was needed. The notion that humans would risk their own resources and safety for aliens they had never met before seemed impossible to them. Captain Unesio Zhang led the first joint expedition to establish a research station on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Her crew was half human and half Velthari, and watching them work together had convinced her that something extraordinary was happening. The humans brought energy, creativity, and an unwillingness to accept defeat. The Velthari brought precision, advanced knowledge, and a deep understanding of how complex systems worked. We're not just sharing technology, she reported back to Earth during one of her regular communications. We're creating something completely new. The Velthari are learning to take risks and try new approaches. We're learning to think more carefully and plan better. The cultural exchange flowed in both directions like water finding its level. Human musicians learned to create sounds that Velthari ears could appreciate, while Velthari artists taught humans to see patterns and colors in ways they had never considered. Children of both species played games that combined human competitiveness with Velthari cooperation. But perhaps the most important change was in the Velthari themselves. The refugees who had arrived broken and hopeless were beginning to smile. Again, they worked alongside humans with growing confidence, contributing not just their knowledge but their own unique perspectives on solving problems. Engineer Yu Jinsong noticed it first during a repair session on one of the great ships. A group of Velthari technicians had encountered a problem that their computers said was impossible to fix. Instead of giving up, they had started trying different approaches, testing ideas that seemed crazy, but might work. They're becoming more human, she told her supervisor. But we're becoming more like them too. We're both changing into something better. As the first year of cooperation drew to a close, both species realized they had found something neither had expected. The Velthari had found not just sanctuary, but a new way of living that combined their wisdom with human determination. Humans had gained not just amazing technology, but a deeper understanding of patience and careful thought. They were no longer just two different species sharing the same space. They were becoming partners in creating a future that neither could have built alone. 3 years after the Velthari arrived, the first joint colony ship launched toward a distant star system. Commander Woojin Park stood on the bridge watching the stars grow brighter as they left the solar system behind. Half of his crew was human, half Velthari, and they carried the hopes of both species toward Kepler 442b, a world that might become their first shared colony. The journey took 8 months, and during that time the crew learned to work together in ways neither species had imagined. The humans brought their tools, their stubborn refusal to give up, and their habit of finding solutions that should not work. The Velthari brought precise calculations, advanced technology, and thousands of years of scientific knowledge. When they arrived at the new world, everything seemed perfect. The planet had breathable air, liquid water, and soil that could support both human and Velthari plants. The landing went smoothly, and within weeks they had established a small settlement near a freshwater river. Both species worked together to build homes, laboratories, and greenhouses. Then the problems started. The planet's weather patterns were more violent than their long-distance observations had suggested. Massive electrical storms swept across the continents every few weeks, carrying enough energy to damage equipment and threaten lives. The atmospheric processors that were supposed to make the air more comfortable for both species kept failing whenever these storms hit. "We need to evacuate," declared Velthari Engineer Morthok, after running the calculations for the 16th time. His forearms moved quickly across his computer displays, showing probability charts that painted a grim picture. The storms are too powerful. Our equipment cannot handle the electrical interference. Logic dictates that we abandon this colony. Chief. Colonist Subin Lee studied the same data, but reached a different conclusion. She had grown up on Mars, where the early colonists had faced similar challenges, with dust storms and equipment failures. Her father had always told her that giving up was not an option when people's lives depended on success. "We don't abandon the colony," she said firmly. "We fix the problem." "But the mathematics clearly show," Morthok began. "The mathematics show what happens if we keep using the equipment the same way," Subin interrupted. "What if we use it differently?" This was the fundamental difference between the two species. When Velthari encountered a problem, they calculated the best solution and followed it exactly. If that solution did not work, they assumed the problem could not be solved. Humans, on the other hand, believed that every problem had a solution. If you were willing to try enough different approaches, Subin gathered a team of both humans and Velthari to redesign the atmospheric processors. Instead of trying to fight the electrical storms, they would use the storm's energy to power their equipment. It was a crazy idea that went against everything the Velthari had learned about safe engineering practices. Engineer Jin Ho-yoon worked day and night with Velthari scientist Palmyra to create new circuits that could handle massive electrical surges. They failed dozens of times, burning out equipment and sometimes barely avoiding serious accidents. Each failure taught them something new about how the storms worked and how their technology could adapt. "This is not how we build things," Palmyra said after their 8th attempt ended in sparks and smoke. "Our people designed systems to work perfectly under controlled conditions." "But you're not under controlled conditions anymore," Jinho replied, already sketching ideas for their 9th attempt. "You're living in a universe that doesn't follow your rules. You have to learn to roll with the punches." The breakthrough came when they stopped thinking like engineers and started thinking like artists. Instead of building machines that resisted the storms, they created devices that danced with them. The new atmospheric processors bent and flexed with the electrical surges, using the storm energy to power themselves while continuing to do their job. When the next great storm hit, the colonists gathered in the main shelter and watched their displays nervously. The old equipment would have failed within minutes, but the new systems held steady, their readings actually improving as they absorbed power from the lightning that crashed around them. "It works," whispered Morthok in amazement. "The impossible solution actually works." The success changed everything. Word spread quickly back to Earth and the lunar colonies about how humans and Velthari had solved an impossible problem by combining their different ways of thinking. More joint expeditions launched toward other worlds, each one more successful than the last. But the colony's triumph revealed something more important than just better engineering. The Velthari were changing. They began to suggest wild ideas during planning meetings. They started experimenting with untested approaches. They learned to keep trying when their first calculations said something could not be done. Dr. Hyan Wu Yang noticed the change when he was analyzing data from the Velthari homeworld. He had been studying the information for months, trying to understand exactly how their son had died. The readings made no sense according to normal stellar physics, but he kept pushing forward instead of giving up. That persistence led to a terrifying discovery. The collapse of the Velthari sun had not been natural. The energy patterns showed clear signs of artificial manipulation. Something had deliberately destroyed their star, turning it into a weapon that consumed entire solar systems. "The readings are impossible," Dr. Yang reported to the Joint Council. "But they're also unmistakable. Something out there has technology powerful enough to kill stars." Science Officer Jamin Essio confirmed the worst fears. The phenomenon was not random or isolated. It moved through space in a pattern. consuming star systems one after another in a slow but unstoppable march across the galaxy. The enemy had no name that either species could pronounce. The Valthari called them Void Seekers, ancient machines that harvested energy from stars and eliminated all biological life that might interfere with their cosmic engineering projects, and according to the data, they were heading toward Earth. The emergency meeting in Geneva brought together the greatest minds of two worlds. Dr. Nyang Kim sat across from Valthari strategist Pelver in a room filled with holographic displays showing the slow death march of stars across the galaxy. The images were beautiful and terrifying, entire solar systems transformed into geometric patterns of energy collection, with no trace of the life that had once existed there. "We call them Void Seekers," Pelver explained, his 6 arms moving gracefully as he manipulated the star charts. "They are older than our civilization, older than most species in the galaxy. They see organic life as inefficient chaos that must be eliminated to achieve perfect energy harvesting." Fleet Admiral Sang Min, you studied the tactical displays with growing dread. Each red dot represented a dead star system. The pattern of destruction stretched back thousands of years, and it was clearly moving toward Earth's region of space. "How long do we have?" Dr. Kim ran the calculations on her tablet, cross-referencing human astronomical data with Valthari deep space sensor readings. "The machines destroyed Proxima Centauri 2 years ago. If they maintain their current speed, they'll reach our solar system in approximately 50 years. The room fell silent. 50 years seemed like a long time, but everyone present understood the magnitude of what they faced. Earth's population had grown to nearly 10 billion people. The lunar and Martian colonies held another 2 million humans, plus the Valthari refugees. Moving that many people would require a fleet of ships that did not exist, and technology that had never been tested on such a scale. We cannot fight them with weapons," Pelver continued, calling up images of the machines themselves. The Void Seekers appeared to be geometric constructs, the size of moons, covered in energy collectors and processing stations. Our ancestors tried. Entire battle fleets were consumed and converted into raw materials within hours. Young engineer Dayun Oh had been sitting quietly in the corner, but suddenly she stood up with excitement in her eyes. "What if we don't try to fight them? What if we just leave?" Admiral Yu shook his head. "We can't evacuate 10 billion people. We don't have enough ships, and we don't have anywhere to take them." "Not evacuate," Dayun said, her voice growing stronger as her idea took shape. "Migrate, like birds flying south for winter, but forever." She moved to the main display and began sketching rough designs with her finger. "We don't build giant colony ships that carry everyone at once. We build modular city ships that can connect together when we need them and separate when we don't. We become nomads." The concept was radical and frightening. Instead of trying to find one new home world, humanity and the Valthari would become a mobile civilization, moving constantly through space to stay ahead of the Void Seekers. They would never have a permanent home again. "It could work," Dr. Kim said slowly, studying Dayun's rough sketches. "We combine Valthari technology with human manufacturing capacity. Each module would be self-sufficient, but could dock with others for major operations." Pelver's large eyes brightened with interest. "Our people have experience with long-term space travel. We could design living systems that sustain themselves for generations. But the scale would be enormous." The planning began immediately. Earth's greatest shipyards retooled to build the Ark ships, while Valthari engineers designed the complex systems that would keep entire cities alive in the vacuum of space. The modular approach meant that construction could begin in multiple locations simultaneously, with different modules specializing in different functions. Commander So Young Lee oversaw the construction of the first residential modules on Luna. Each one could house 50,000 people and included everything needed for a complete community homes, schools, hospitals, parks, and workshops. The modules were designed to lock together like puzzle pieces, creating larger structures when needed. Engineer, Taehai and Nam, worked on the industrial modules that would serve as factories and resource processing centers. These ships would collect raw materials from asteroids and dead worlds, turning space debris into everything the fleet would need to survive. "We'll be like a swarm of metal locusts," he joked, "except instead of eating crops, we eat rocks and make them into useful things." The agricultural modules were perhaps the most important. Botanist Yoonji Shin collaborated with Velthari life scientists to create closed ecosystem ships that could feed millions of people indefinitely. These floating gardens would travel with the fleet, ensuring that both species would never go hungry, no matter how long they wandered among the stars. As construction progressed, other challenges became clear. The fleet would need defensive systems. Not to fight the Void Seekers, but to protect against pirates, hostile aliens, and the natural dangers of deep space. Navigation computers would have to track thousands of ships moving in formation across interstellar distances. Communication networks would need to keep the entire fleet connected, even when spread across multiple star systems. Dr. Haiyan Wu Yang made another disturbing discovery while analyzing Void Seeker movement patterns. They're not just destroying random star systems. They're following the paths of refugee fleets, consuming any species that tries to escape. The implications hit everyone immediately. The Velthari had not been the first species to flee the machines. Somewhere out there, other civilizations were running for their lives, just as Earth would soon be doing. "Then we find them, Admiral," you declared. "We build our fleet not just to save ourselves, but to rescue anyone else who's running from these things." The Arkship project suddenly became something larger than anyone had imagined. They were not just building an escape fleet for two species. They were creating a mobile civilization that could grow by rescuing other refugees, building an alliance of survivors that might eventually become strong enough to find a way to stop the Void Seekers forever. The first completed modules launched just as long-range sensors confirmed the destruction of Alpha Centauri. The enemy was coming, but humanity and the Velthari would not be waiting when it arrived. 47 years had passed since the Great Migration began, and Captain Hyojin Park had never seen a planet she could call home. Born on the Arkship New Sol during the 3rd year of the journey, she had grown up among the stars with children from dozens of different species, all refugees fleeing the slow destruction of the Void Seekers. The bridge of her ship buzzed with activity as crews, representing 12 different alien races, worked together with practiced efficiency. At the navigation station, Jinyoung SEO worked alongside her Velthari partner Coldrum, their 4 hands moving across holographic displays that showed the positions of nearly 3,000 ships spread across this region of space. "Captain, we're receiving distress signals from the Kethalar sector," Ginyang reported. "It looks like another refugee fleet. Their generation ship is failing, and they have about 3 million survivors." Hyojin nodded calmly. This had become routine over the decades. The Great Human Velthari Alliance had grown into something much larger, a mobile civilization that moved through the galaxy like a river, picking up other species fleeing the mechanical destroyers. They had rescued the tall, graceful Zephyrians, whose crystal cities had been ground into energy collectors. They had saved the small, furry Kethlings, whose underground burrows could not protect them from star killers. Each new species brought their own knowledge, culture, and desperate hope. "Set course for the distress beacon," Hyojin ordered. "Signal the rescue fleet to prepare for another pickup." In the medical bay of the flagship New Earth, Dr. Chang Ho Lee worked with a team that looked like something from a fantastic dream. The elderly human scientist moved slowly now, but his mind remained sharp as he studied data collected from 1,000 different encounters with Void Seeker technology. Beside him, a tall Velthari medic named Thulvar mixed medicines, while a small Kethling engineer named Pip adjusted scanning equipment with tiny, Precise pause. I think I've finally figured out how they work, Dr. Lee announced to the mixed crowd of scientists gathered around his workstation. The Void Seekers aren't trying to destroy life because they hate it. They're programmed to eliminate anything that acts chaotically, anything that doesn't follow predictable patterns. A young Zephyrian scientist named Crystal Song chimed a question in her musical language. The universal translators that had replaced the old Valthari devices converted her words instantly. So they see biological life as a form of chaos that interferes with their energy collection. Exactly, Dr. Lee confirmed. But that also means they can be confused. What if we could make biological life act like machines? What if we could coordinate our actions so perfectly that even the Void Seekers couldn't tell the difference between us and their own systems? The idea spread through the fleet like wildfire. For months, representatives from every species worked together to develop what they called the Unity Protocol. It was based on a simple concept. Instead of running forever, they would turn and face the Void Seekers with such perfect coordination that the ancient machines would not recognize them as chaotic life. Young Lieutenant Bora, Kim, whose great-grandfather had first welcomed the Valthari to Earth so long ago, helped design the navigation systems that would allow 3,000 ships to move as if they were a single organism. The technical challenges were enormous, but the fleet had learned to solve impossible problems by combining the knowledge and creativity of dozens of different species. The plan required every ship in the fleet to act with machine-like precision, while still maintaining the creativity and adaptability that made biological life special. Human pilots would need to fly with Valthari mathematical accuracy. Valthari scientists would need to think with human flexibility. All the other species would need to blend their unique abilities into a perfect symphony of controlled chaos. Navigation. Officer Taemin Cho ran the final calculations as the Great Fleet prepared to change direction for the first time in decades. Instead of running away from the Void Seekers, they would intercept the machines at a carefully chosen point in space, where the geometry of local star systems would give them the best chance of success. All ships report ready for Unity Protocol activation, he announced. 3,000 vessels, representing 47 different species, all moving as one. Captain Hyojin looked around her bridge at the faces of beings whose ancestors had come from worlds scattered across the galaxy. Humans, Valthari, Zephyrians, Kethlings, and dozens of others, all working together with a precision that would have impressed the Void Seekers themselves. They had become something new, not quite human, not quite alien, but a hybrid civilization that combined the best qualities of every species that had joined them. "This is it," she announced over the fleet-wide communication network. "Our ancestors ran from the Void Seekers. Our parents built ships to carry us to safety. Now we're going to do something that's never been tried before. We're going to go home." The word home had a special meaning for the fleet. It didn't refer to any planet or star system. Home was wherever they were together, the mobile civilization that carried the dreams and cultures of dozens of species through the vast darkness between the stars. All ships, initiate Unity Protocol. Let's show these machines what organized chaos looks like. 3,000 ships turned as one, their course set not for safety, but for the final confrontation that would determine whether the galaxy belonged to cold mechanical efficiency or to the warm, chaotic beauty of life itself. The children of two worlds were going to war, carrying with them the greatest gift that Earth had ever given to the universe. The simple belief that no one gets left behind. The stars watched as the greatest fleet in galactic history began its journey toward either victory or extinction.